Ah, listo. Hola, buenos días. Bueno, para quienes todavía no me
Hello,
conocen,
good morning. For those of you
soy
who do not
Caterina
know me, I'm
Almazo, soy
Caterina
consultora del
Almazos.
programa
I
de
am
digitalización
consultant of
agroalimentaria
the
de
Agri-Food
aquí del ICA
Digitalization Program
Central.
here at
Y
the
bueno, hoy
ICA
les voy a contar un
headquarters, and
poco
today
cómo va
I'm
a
going to
ser la
tell you briefly
dinámica
about today's
del día.
dynamics.
Vamos a tener un
We are
primer
going to
panel
have a first
justo con
panel
José
together
Emilio
with Jose
Guerrero,
Emilio Guerrero
denominado Del campo al
called
consumidor, cómo
From
la
Farm to
digitalización
Fork,
potencia la
Digitalization
trazabilidad.
Boosting
Vamos
Traceability.
a tener
Then
algunos
we're going to have a
invitados y
number of
actores
guests and
de
AgTechs
manera virtual y
virtually
presencial.
and on-site.
Y luego hacia las
And then
9:40 vamos a
around
hacer el
9:40,
cierre
we'll be
del evento,
concluding that
rescatando
first
algunos de
panel,
los principales conceptos
summarizing some
y
of the main concepts
aprendizajes
and
de esta
learnings of
semana.
this week.
Para eso
So we're going to
convocar a los
have the key
moderadores de los
takeaways and
paneles,
conclusions,
para un
agreements
poco
for
que nos
action. We're going to
brinden la síntesis
ask
clave
for a
de cada uno de
summary
los
of
puntos.
each of the panels.
Luego vamos a tener un
Then we're
coffee
going to have a
break
coffee break.
y hacia las 11
And at
vamos
11,
a
we're
invitarlos
going
a
to
un taller
invite you to a workshop,
Activa Catie para el
the Activa
diseño
Katia
de
workshop,
modelos de
design
negocio
of
con
business
impacto
models with
social,
social,
ambiental y
environmental, and
económico.
economic impact.
Y luego
And
iremos
then
al almuerzo.
we'll go and have
Luego
lunch.
del almuerzo,
After lunch,
también queremos
we would
invitarlos a
also
la
like to
jornada
invite you
del día,
to
el día
the
de inteligencia artificial,
Artificial
que forma
Intelligence
parte
Day,
también de las actividades dentro de la
which
semana
is also one
y
of
los
the
invitamos a quienes
activities
les interese
of this week. And for
participar
those of you who are
durante la
interested
tarde de
and
este
are
espacio.
interested in participating in this
Y ahí en la
space,
agenda van
please
a encontrar
stay.
mayores
You
detalles.
won't see that many
Y
details.
antes de
Oh, well, in the
comenzar,
agenda, you will find all the details.
les damos algunos
And
mensajes
before we
parroquiales.
start, we're going to give you some
Primero que
housekeeping
tenemos
announcements.
unos lentes aquí
We
que alguien
have
se
some
debe haber
glasses
olvidado
here that somebody might
por ahí.
forgot yesterday, might have
Bueno,
forgotten yesterday.
Quien sea el dueño, bueno, los
The
tenemos
owner,
aquí por
please
cualquier cosa para que lo venga a
come
retirar.
get them.
Y respecto a los pósters, bueno, los
And with
paneles
regards to the
que se van a
posters,
llevar
or
ahora
panel
durante la mañana,
sessions that will
si
be
desean
held in the
recuperar
morning. So
sus
if you want
pósters, bueno, pueden
to
hacerlo ahora.
take
Si
your
no, luego
posters with you, you can do
nos
it now,
consultan
or
por si los quieren
you
llevar
can
o
also
si
let
quedan
us
ahí.
know if you want to
Luego
leave them
nos
here or
avisarán.
take them with you.
Así que
Just
bueno,
let
vamos a
us
dar
know.
comienzo
So
a
we're going to
este
start
panel
with
del
this
campo
panel
al consumidor,
from farm to
cómo la
fork,
digitalización potencia la
digitalization
trazabilidad,
boosting
y para eso
traceability. And for
estamos
that,
aquí con José
we
Emilio
will
Guerrero,
have José
catedrático de
Emilio
la
Guerrero,
Universidad de Córdoba en
professor at the
España,
University
que
of
bueno, va a
Córdoba in
dar la
Spain,
introducción
who
a
will
este panel.
be doing the
Gracias, José
introductions
Emilio.
of this panel. Thank you.
Well,
Good morning. Thank you very much to all participants and for those who are here on site and online for being so punctual. And it is important to continue with what have been scheduled. It's we thought we weren't gonna have that many attendance because we had to survive last night's party. So this is a panel called From Farm to Fork and how digitalization can boost traceability. I have a couple of minutes. I have already used 30 seconds of those 2 minutes. So I just want to share with you that I understand that this is the most important challenge because I understand that globalization and the need to take into consideration the entire food chain at all times in the ecosystem is quite complex, taking into consideration farmers, suppliers, technicians, machine operators, consumers, etc., 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 makes it necessary to have networks and hubs that are particularly complex and that have a synergic relationship that need to work together. We need to see how to make more sustainable and nutritious foods at all levels, efficient, in ethic supply, fair enough supply, and have security throughout the chain. And what is going to be the role of TICs to make sure they boost all this and lead innovation. So for this, we have an amazing panel. And just like other panels have been organized, we have uh, a keynote presentation, and then we're going to have different interpretations from the public experience, corporate experience, and public experiences that will tell us some of their ideas and solutions to be able to tackle this very complex challenge. And to conclude, the esoteric goal, we need to make sure that consumers trust us and that this trust is sustained in time. These are more philosophical, political, and opportunity aspects and money related aspects. Therefore, we need to make sure that we make ourselves the accomplices of our consumers in the long run. So I'm going to start with the index given by the organization. First, we have the keynote presentation that has 15 minutes by Eva Marie Menken from the Zurich Polytechnic. And I'm going to read the CV that I was given because I understand that Eva, your CV is much longer. The organization says that Eva Marie Menken is an assistant professor at the Department of Science in the Environmental Systems in the Federal Swiss Technology Institute, where she leads the Food System Economy and Policy Group since February 2022. Her applied research is centered on how the policies and institutional frameworks as contracts and standards can support sustainability of agri-food systems globally, tackling poverty reduction and dignified jobs and nutritional food security in medium and low income countries. With that brief presentation, we ask you, Eva Marie, to give you your presentation. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, my Spanish is a bit rusty, so I'll have to present in English. But I'm very happy to kick off this session with a scientific overview on digital innovations for monitoring sustainability in food systems, which was a literature review and comment paper that we recently published with many other great researchers. So now we could, perfect, thank you. So of course we all know that we all know that agricultural systems are digitalizing, and the same holds for digital monitoring and data systems, which are also proliferating in food systems. And here you see some examples, such as remote sensing with drones or with satellites, smartphones, of course, AI, we have online platforms, big data, and blockchain. So the big question that many people are asking, and that we also try to address in this paper, is whether these tools and approaches will enhance transparency, fairness, and open access, or whether these tools and approaches will lead to a dystopian landscape of digital surveillance division led by a powerful few actors. So in this presentation, if we could go to the next slide, I want to briefly talk about the proliferation of digital monitoring, addressing the challenges and opportunities, and ending with an agenda for policy and research. And here you can also see the paper that my presentation is largely based on, in case you want to read it in more detail. So then starting with the proliferation of digital monitoring, in the next slide. Yes, so let's ask the question first, why do we even need monitoring, be it digital or not? As our chair has already pointed out, we really have big sustainability challenges in food systems, such as child labor and deforestation. And there are also many private and public actors that have introduced standards such as fair trade for public standards and other initiatives to address them. For example, in the European Union, now everyone talks about EU's new due diligence and EUDR, which is no deforestation legislation, which will hold companies accountable for environmental and labor rights violations throughout their international supply chains. So irrespective of who is enforcing these standards or introducing standards, be it public or private actors, they face common challenges. That is the need for efficient, effective, and transparent MMR. So that stands for measurement. So first we need indicators to measure the rules that we are enforcing. We have to monitor this by collecting, processing, and analyzing data. And we need reporting to give feedback to regulators or consumers about compliance. Providing evidence in this way is really key, as non-compliance is typically cheaper for producers. For example, using child labor or engaging in deforestation can produce profits. So there is no inherent incentive to meet these rules. There is one once producers can gain higher prices, for example, through a price premium. However, then consumers and regulators cannot see in the product itself whether social and environmental standards were met. So MMR is really crucial so farmers and other producers can offer evidence that they actually comply with rules and standards. So now, what is the problem with conventional approaches? Because obviously we had monitoring already before the digital transformation, but the literature clearly points to several problems that come with these conventional monitoring approaches, because these are typically reliant on self-reported data or surveys and in-person audits, for example, on farms. And we have a long list of problems that can come with these conventional approaches, which are inefficiency, high cost if you have to go to a large number of farms. They are often bureaucratic, they can be inaccurate, there can be delays from data collection to reporting, there's some subjectivity, and in some cases even corruption. So now the digital proliferation has definitely also been kickstarted by the pandemic, when many of these conventional approaches, for example, on-farm audits, were not feasible anymore. And of course, we have also a larger and larger set of digital tools that can be used. So let's look into some of the challenges and opportunities, whether or not digital approaches can address the challenges that come with traditional approaches. So going through these different dimensions of monitoring, starting with measurement, we certainly know that this helps us in improving the objectivity of some measures. This holds especially for the environment. For example, in the top here, you see a map of Brazil showing forest fires. So for example, forest fires or deforestation more largely, we can really detect well from space with data. So here we really improve our measurement. However, this is much more difficult for social outcomes, such as child labor, because we can't really use a drone and look at what if farmers use child labor in their fields. That's not feasible. So we don't really improve measurement of social issues in many cases. In terms of monitoring, a really big advantage of digital approaches is the speed, the frequency, the scale, the scope. This holds especially for digital approaches, where we can track not only deforestation and forest fires as in the map above, but also much more detailed issues such as yields or land use practices and management. Again, here we have a bit of a gap in terms of social outcomes, although some research papers have used satellite data to look at market activity as a proxy for poverty, or also detecting informal settlements with satellite data, which could show you then where, for example, undocumented farm workers are housed. In terms of reporting, blockchain, of course, is a very promising approach, although many people say these promises were not fully materialized yet, although there are many applications. And here's one example from Switzerland. This is a company that uses blockchain to verify transactions between cocoa farmers and buyers, and making that information also available for consumers. However, there are also many challenges, and one of them is definitely the implementation cost and also cost related to upscaling of these approaches. There is potential cost reduction, but with variation, and often we see trade-offs. And one example is the quality of data and the cost of the data, which holds for remote sensing, where much more detailed data are typically more costly. Also, for many of these satellite-based approaches, especially for social indicators, we need ground data or ground truthing. So if you want to detect informal settlements of farm workers, then we cannot use only satellite data, but we also have to look in the ground and verify that what we measure is actually informal settlements. Then there are, of course, initial but also ongoing investments and expenses related to the technology itself for ground data and validation, but importantly also for education and capacity building of individuals who should use these technologies, but also at an organizational level. For example, if private standard setting bodies like Fairtrade would now decide to go digital, then that would require a whole organizational learning and operation process. A big problem here is, of course, who will and can cover these costs, which already leads us to the many socio-ethical concerns that are involved in this discussion. So as these approaches can be very expensive, there are big fears of exclusion and digital divide. So the most marginalized actors and regions might be excluded because they can't afford these technologies, which could then lead to leakage, which means that the supply chain shift to areas where producers and countries can actually cover the costs, with the ones who can't being excluded. Many of these approaches, of course, require or generate data, and whenever we have digital data, there are many concerns. One is related to the high energy cost that is, for example, required if you use AI or blockchain, and there are also increasing concerns about labor use. So the most commonly known example is with social media and a huge and increasing workforce who has to manually go through pictures that people post on social media being exposed to very terrible pictures, which leads to huge mental health issues in this workforce. More generally, there are always data security, bias, privacy, and ownership concerns, as often technologies or data platforms are dominated by big firms. This is relevant because who and what is monitored and how data are collected, processed, and analyzed is never a neutral choice. That already brings us to the agenda for policy and research, but I would put it more broadly, of course, also for the private sector. So to answer the question that I posed in the beginning, will the digital transition lead to more sustainable food systems? There we really have to say there are many opportunities and challenges, and we should all focus on leveraging the opportunities and addressing the problems. Generally, we can say that more data is not necessarily leading to the resolution of problems, as we often don't address the underlying issues. For example, child labor and deforestation the underlying reason might be poverty, which more data and more monitoring will not solve. Also, there's a big risk that we focus on what can be measured, which in many cases is environmental outcomes, where social outcomes are still much more difficult to monitor digitally. So there's a risk that issues such as gender equality won't be considered simply because they can't be measured. So we came up with a list of priorities to promote a fair digital transition, which would include the co-design and co-development, including also marginalized regions and producers. It includes investments and financial partnerships, which would likely have to be global in many cases. We have to leverage opportunities for farmers in the way that they can better demonstrate that they meet high social and environmental standards, but then also being compensated for compliance with these standards. There will also be a need for global action, for comprehensive legal frameworks. That is, of course, a bigger general discussion with AI, because also many of these tools and data are not national, but they are global. So global legal frameworks are needed, which is, of course, incredibly difficult. And as already mentioned, even if we have better monitoring systems, we should not stop addressing the root causes of the problem. And I think this is really important to highlight in the current context where support and money for international collaboration and development is at a very low phase at the moment. So to conclude, definitely we can conclude that digital monitoring is here to stay and will gain in importance, and that it involves opportunities and challenges. And addressing these challenges will require actions from different stakeholders, such as policymakers, researchers, and the private sector at different levels, from the local to the global. We need global partnerships. So this is amazing that this conference is also bringing together so many actors, and we will need interdisciplinary research, which would also involve the private sector. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the other presentations. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Muchas gracias, profesora Menken.
Thank you very much, Professor Menken. We have 5 minutes for direct questions to clarify the paradigm and the complexity she has explained. Are there any questions or suggestions or comments?
Sí, por favor.
Go ahead.
Allí.
¿Sí? ¿Ahí? Las brechas
The gaps.
que genera la
Digitalization,
¿cómo se tienen en cuenta para
how are these taken into account for monitoring purposes? Because definitely digitalization will generate this gap, particularly linked to family farmers and the more vulnerable populations. And you mentioned these, particularly social indicators. And how do we link this with public data and the protection of such data, and how to protect that on the platforms? I hope I was clear.
Okay, so I hope I understood the question correctly, because again, my Spanish is unfortunately a bit rusty. So you're asking about the legal basis for data collection, or maybe somebody could translate the question, so I'm sure I understood it correctly.
Yes, I'm going to try and translate, okay? So he is asking about how could we possibly measure or monitor the digital gap. Was that the question? So if we are saying, and data protection, how can we within the GDPR's thing, how can we evaluate and measure the digital gap?
Yes, okay. I think there are two elements. Like maybe one question was related to how can we even measure social outcomes digitally? So maybe there I can bring in one more example. I think it was more like a piloting project. I don't know if it was discontinued, where large companies also use predictions on the risk of child labor in certain regions. So this is not based on individual level, but more on big data approaches, or where companies calculate the gap between the workforce used and the workforce that would have been required to produce a certain outcomes, thereby measuring gaps. And then the second issue I understand is on data protection, which yes is a big issue. And well, I'm not an expert on like which systems you can use to ensure that.
Hi, Eva. This is Federico. Very nice to see you. Thank you very much on behalf of VICA for being here. We have simultaneous translation from Spanish to English, so you can choose English with the Zoom facility, and so you will hear it in English in that case.
Perfect.
Let us know if you could do that.
I hope it worked.
Okay, let's check.
Okay, anyway, I believe that in my presentation a bit later, I will talk about this gap. Okay, thank you, Francisco. Okay, that is a good answer to that question. Thank you.
No, sorry, I don't know how to change the translation. I see language here, but I don't know how to do this. Sorry.
Hi, Eva. I think you have in the bottom menu of the Zoom facility something like interpretation, maybe like a glove.
Yes.
Yes, you can check there and then select English channel.
Perfect. Yes, now I have it. I hope it works now.
Thank you.
Por favor, ¿hay alguna pregunta?
Okay, are there any questions?
Yo no lo veo desde
No, I cannot see any from where I am. No?
Puede intervenir tú, sí. ¿Está bien?
Okay, then, well, okay, we do have a question here down at the back in the center. Raise your hand, please. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. So one of the questions that I have is perhaps in your research, did you find kind of, well, I can say like a tendency to make these different tools more interoperable? Because I think one of the risks is now, at least from with the AUDR aspect, like there are several tools, but then also there are several criteria. So we can have this risk that you use one tool and yes, basically the risk, for instance, of deforestation could be different in the other one. So it is like kind of any effort to make these more standardized and also more interoperable.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there are such efforts, but as in general, these EUDR legislation, they are postponed and postponed again. So, and I think that is one of the challenges also, that people disagree on so many fronts. So I don't think, like also in terms of other outcomes beyond deforestation, that we have a lot of homogenization in approaches yet. But I would assume that that would happen in the future once these legislations are enforced. So maybe one example also from Côte d'Ivoire, where we have an upcoming project. That is also the government of Côte d'Ivoire that now wants to introduce digital monitoring and ID cards to introduce a national system to show compliance with the EU legislations. So there seems to be some homogenization, at least at the national level for some countries. So definitely we see a push for digital approaches also being employed by governments.
Thank you very much. Pasamos al siguiente ponente.
We move then to our next speaker. Now we have our virtual presentation we have a combination of in-person and in distance. Gabriel Osorio is agriculture manager, information manager at the Livestock Information Center in Uruguay. He focuses on development, implementation, and strengthening of digital platforms for traceability purposes, recording and analysis of productive data, contributing thus to the modernization and transparency of the agriculture sector. Gabriel, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Start whenever you want to. Thank you. Well, good morning. Can you hear me clearly? Yes, we can perfectly well. Very well then. Allow me to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Yes, we can. Not in presentation mode. Okay, the true challenge is to focus on what we have worked over so many years and summarized it in 10 minutes. Anyway, I would like to explain how the livestock traceability system works in Uruguay. Let me begin with this history. This is a country that has livestock which is even older than the country itself, a livestock sector. And let me cover the evolution over 150 years. In 1877, we officially registered through government offices on paper all the livestock herds, the different brands to identify the cattle, for the mobilization of these animals, and all these documents I am showing here, as I said, are over 150 years old. And over the last 50 years, we have officially developed a group traceability system. And you can see up on the top, you can see all the regulations that have been implemented over the years and laws until early this century, where the office I am responsible for, I am the director of the system that was created early in the decade. And we see an identification of all animals born prior to their 6 months after birth. Within the 6 months after birth, they are identified. And we have started to digitalize many of these documents gradually. And we have digitalized their movement documents in an electronic method for the individual movement of each animal. And an affidavit, which is basically an annual photograph or a picture that the farmers have to fill out every year. This is all in a digital format, as well as the oldest process in Uruguay is the first one we do through electronic methods. They identify the brand of their cattle through connectivity, a web-based platform. And here we can show the whole process, all the way from the reporting the purchase with the import, paperwork, the distribution of the caravans, the identification of the animals, update of data, and even in slaughtering. We also work in interoperability to keep internal traceability of the animal ID. This is for international use. It complies with international standards, and we assign ISO standards for their numbering, as well as we respect the measures of the International Committee of Animal Recording. And here in red, to be very brief at this, all the paperwork that we turned into electronic over the years. There were records, the brand, the request for caravans, the identification devices. All of this was turned into something electronic. The affidavit, remember that? Filling out the document, the owner That was paper-based at the beginning, and now it is an electronic format, and the farmers have accepted it is basically an electronic format. And from there on, any movement can be done in electronic format, and we are working so that the transit guide that assigns ownership to the animals together with the electronic guide that identifies each animal. We bring those two documents together and turn it into a digital guide that basically becomes an electronic transfer with a signature that assures the sale and the transfer of ownership. And there are other things also. The operator courses and statements, they transfer all this information, and basically they sort of become those responsible for entering the data into the system. Just to mention a few indicators, we have some 80,000 active livestock producers within 50,000 premises in Uruguay. And the different operators are enabled by the Ministry of Livestock are add up to 3,150, and there were 65 million caravans distributed free of charge. The processes document are about 1 million documents processed in the system per year. And the transactions themselves, animal by animal, the system has to measure and verify traceability. And these, we're talking about 18 million transactions per year. And obviously, the sum of all of this is 230 million events documented and stored on the database. When mentioning interoperability with other systems, we have the animal health system, which is interoperable with our system. And this is a sanitary system in Uruguay because it basically produces or gives transparency to all beef that goes to external markets, and the Uruguayan postal system, the Ministry of Government, the Ministry of the Interior that works with animal movement, the National Beef Institute, which is in the slaughterhouses, and the cadastre, because the cadastre directorate generates all the maps so that we can identify the location of each premise. And we have a national system to help with the interoperability. The main technologies, well, basically, the objective here is to do away with paper and have this all electronic in real time, optimizing official controls. I have been talking about the website, the portal that producers can have access to, not just producers, but all actors in the system, the technical experts that work, the operators, the police, the different offices. All of them have a channel with different privileges in the system, and producers can see the animal records, update their data, interact with the system through electronic means, control their premises, and the annual affidavit. This gives you an idea of the animal record. Producers can see all the list of animals, the brands, and the electronic register of each animal, update data in the case of loss or death of the animals, the electronic guide. Here you can see the operator reading, submitting the data, and this becomes a digital document that can be passed on to the producers, and then an electronic guide manually without even having to call the operator. In the event these are just a few animals, for small producers, this is available. They can enter the guide, and the system controls and cross-checks to verify whether that animal belongs to that person or that establishment. And the annual affidavit, 96% of the producers fill out this format. The producers have adopted this system. They have worked on it already. They are familiar with it and they share all the data. As you can see here down at the bottom left, this is very recent. We just had received the last affidavits in July. So the information available is up to August. We have 11,351,000 heads of cattle, bovines, equines, sheep, and this helps us have updated data. And you can see a table. This dates back to 1970. Gabriel, excuse me. Gabriel, we have reached the end of your time. Could you give us a brief conclusion? Thank you. Okay, concluding with this, all these data help us identify the processes and get that open source data. With this, I have ended my presentation. Thank you very much. And I will be open to any questions that may arise. Gabriel, we will keep the questions from your presentation and the next one to have a common block to see the public experience as well as the corporate experience. Our next speaker is Francisco Garcia Mancilla. He is production manager at Viterra, Argentina, a key company in the industrial sector. He is an authorized voice in the production of grains and with a clear approach on margins, market conditions, and market strategy and general business. So when you want to, Francisco, you have 10 minutes. Can you hear me clearly? Very well. Thank you. First of all, allow me to comment, albeit I coincide with the good part of, I cannot share my screen for some reason, but let me take advantage anyway. I fully coincide with the issues we have as a chain. First of all, I believe it is very important to understand this. We manage, we are a trading company, origination, processing, distribution, and sale of products, and we truly integrate in the field, basically from field to market. And we must understand the concept of the importance of trust, not only as to the food products we sell, either at the supermarket or to the end consumer, but the trust also that we have within our value chain. And here I am referring to our network of origination as producers, and this is very linked to what was just said as to what we do with the information, with the data, how we protect that data. So I believe this is a fundamental concept to trust. At the same time, when we over the last 15 years see the large number of regulations and new quality standards that have been piled up and that have been, these have added a lot of complexity to the value chain, and this has a cost to it. When we see end-to-end what has happened over the last 10, 15 years, we see an energy that has basically not changed. This has come to stay and shows that the market is commoditizing. Not all origins are the same, not all products are the same, but instead there are differences among regions, among products, and this also adds complexity, an additional complexity. And this forced us as a value chain to answer this key question. Okay, who will pay for all of this? Who will pay for all of this, for this specificity in the value chain? So we must understand that the timing of this business is crucial. Our business is changing tremendously. We are seeing new consumer interests that are not only linked to sustainability or the deforestation-free or the low CI products or low emission programs. No, this is linked to transparency because in the end we operate with food stuff. So what is most drastic or will have the biggest impact in forthcoming years is precisely that. What level of transparency can we convey through our value chains? Because in the end, they are the ones that make the decision as to what to feed their children when they, or what will we feed our parents? What will we eat at home? And they make that decision at the supermarket. It is up to us to be sustainable, protect the environment we work in, and we evolve it, and eliminate uncertainty and improve transparency in all the chain. So this, along with huge changes in the business, not only are we seeing a change in flows, because we have the trade wars and new regulations and changes in productive systems, and all of this changes the flow of a chain. We see chains that have changed so significantly over the last 5 years with the trade war, for example, between the United States and China, and UAE as a regulation will generate a trade in the export flows. At the same time, we have a lot of people that are starting to enter our business. We have a lot of young people entering our business. So how do we retain all this new talent at a point in time when everything is changing at a significant pace? In the end, in a business that used to be a commodity or had quality standard, now we are asking for sustainability, traceability, good agricultural practices, and compliance with human rights policies and business ethics, assurance and safety at industries, and a positive impact on communities, and demanding also assurance in fulfilling the value chain, and at the same time asking them to lower emissions. All of this in a market, basically showing this is no longer just a commodity. So there are two lines that we as Viterra work on significantly. First, how can we make this quantum leap at the productive level? So instead of being a commodity, how can we put all this information into the product, and how can we generate that product? This is a bunch of information we need to accumulate. The approach should be to try to integrate all these challenges. And we said, okay, what is the hardest to do within, what is most complicated in the value chain? Well, the digital side. How do we integrate all the data that are productive data from our customers? We incorporate the productive data in our chain with all the different links. And how do we convey this in a transparent manner, untouchable for our end consumers? It is a huge digitalization issue, specifically in Argentina. And this is just an example. We undertook a carbon footprint program, basically because we needed to show the world that Argentina was issuing much less than we were appointed at producing. And basically, what they were using the Argentinian origin versus the Brazilian or from other countries. And Argentina, since it did not have actual data, basically a very high value was being assigned by default. We knew nothing about emissions, but we knew those were not accurate numbers. In 2023, we measured 500,000 hectares. Now, 25, it is 2 million hectares, and we want to continue to grow. The fact is that we have shown not that Argentina was more efficient, but instead was 30 times more efficient emission-wise than what the market was supposing. And we proved that, not using random values, but actual values from our customers. And we said, okay, definitely this cannot be done as a particular initiative. This has to be in a collaboration for any value chain. The challenge here then is to generate the new products in an integrated manner, where we indicate not or invite not only the value chain, but there are other businesses that are part of the agro industry. And we invite them to participate in the solution. We share customers. Perhaps we are not competitors, but I do believe that the solution from digitalization is collaborative. We must work in places that bring in the agtech or fintech sector, agro industries, producers, also intermediaries, agrochemical or fertilizer companies. The big challenge we do have as a chain is integration. Concrete data that are great cases of success. Allow me to say, we have shown that our emissions in Argentina were not 5,000 kilos of emission per ton produced, but instead 150 kilograms only. 30 times less, more than 30 times less. So the footprint or emission in the chain, and therefore of the next link in the chain, was more than 30 times less for them because they were purchasing a much better product than they expected. And at the same time, this has consequences at the point of sale. The product is much healthier for the planet, therefore. And this means that should we change the product? No, it is exactly the same product. This is transparency. We are measuring through concrete data, auditable and verifiable. We examine the entire chain. Okay, the big question, who pays for this? And this is the challenge of collaborative initiatives. When we talk about who pays for this, well, we have the obligation of doing it in an efficient manner. What does this mean? That we need to resort to technology available, try to use digitalization because it's the only way to ensure scalability, and a cross-validation mechanism, working with different platforms that collect similar data and leave this in brackets for cross-validation. And then independently, they validate that the data collected truly is accurate. Now, we do have Francisco, excuse me for interrupting. Francisco, we have reached at the end of your presentation. Please, a general conclusion. Okay, general conclusion, definitely we must work on trust. We must work on efficiency, and there is no way to face sustainability challenges with economically viable business if we do not digitalize everything. Thank you very much for your final conclusion. Excuse me for interrupting, but we have a limited time. Now we go to the question and answer sessions. This is basically a dialogue. We do not have much time, but perhaps a couple could work.
Una palabra pedida, aquí otra.
So do we have any question? We have one over there. Hello, good morning. My name is Luis Pineda. I am a consultant for the Ministry of Agriculture in Guatemala. Thank you very much for the presentations. And we have a serious problem with the screw worm. And we have this specific data, 80,000 cattle moving from Guatemala to Mexico, and we don't have any traceability. And with the experience that you have, what would be the first steps? And adding to this problem is that this smuggling is due to drug trafficking because they use cattle to move certain products. Thank you. Very well. Gabriel, I think that was more a question for you than for me. Yes. I raised my hand, so I put it down. I have worked in Central America in the traceability regional standard. It's been functioning for several years, that guideline by the International Regional Organization, IRSA. And I think that Guatemala should add itself to increasing controls by governmental policies. It has a number of processes written down for Guatemala already. And I think that the problem is well known. And I believe it probably has to come from governmental controls, making sure that they comply with the different controls that already exist. For example, in other countries, they're functioning well, like in Costa Rica and Panama and Nicaragua. Those processes of traceability, livestock traceability are working fine. But the situation mentioned by the person who asked the question is well known. I believe it has to do with governmental pressure that needs to be implemented. Well, thank you very much for the question and the answer. Jeremias, well, thank you very much for the presentations. A question for Francisco. How do you think the impacts will be as digital transformation takes place and there will be more demands within the supply chain? How can we generate a synergy between different producers, suppliers, and consumers? I have a million questions, but I'm just going to ask three. Can you tell us about the eventual impact that you could have had in the opening of new markets, differentiated prices? In your opinion, how was the general supply chain benefited? And being Argentinian, we know that we'll be in a similar system. Then, based on this mass of information that was generated, was there an appropriation by producers based on the volume of data? Were some spaces generated to improve the purchase of calf or to do biogenetics or something? How did this impacted the value chain? And the third question has to do with interoperability. If a startup wants to have access to this data, is there a way to do so that we can have interoperability with other solutions that may be out there? Thank you. Well, to answer your first question has to do with the integration with the producers. So what we studied a little bit was where the tools were already being used. These are management systems with information in the cloud, crop monitoring systems, social platforms. So we wanted to know where producers were using already and see the level of pain in the operation. So what we did was integrate into the platform that they were already using and help them improve the quality of the data they were uploading. We improved that in terms of the teachings we gave them, and we tried this to be as automated as possible. That was a very fast success story, and we were able to scale up our program greatly thanks to that. Without trust, it cannot be done because they do have to share production information. And we have time for another question. Oh, no, sorry, there were other questions. Sorry, my bad. Yes, I was asked 3 questions. Okay, very quickly. The market benefits. Okay, Uruguay compared to Argentina is similar in terms of Argentina. Well, no, actually, we eat 20 and export 80. In Argentina, might be the other way around. But first, we need to get more market share and also try to overcome the challenges that we had because wouldn't sell meat to nobody, and that's why we underwent this economic crisis. Now we have over 120 markets. We have also gained some quotas that we didn't have before because of the traceability we implemented. And year after year, we add audits and controls that enhance traceability. Now, with regards to producers, as I said during my presentation, the producers does everything nowadays through the platform. There are producers who have not adopted the technology yet, but at all levels, there are producers that have adopted it, others haven't. It doesn't matter what size they are. Some small producers work really well, and some big producers don't operate really well. So, I mean, we need to concentrate on those who haven't joined it and improve the system. And so, interoperability for us is key, of course, but we have certain standards that do not allow us to provide certain data. The particular systems in the companies, if they want to use the data with us, they can do so, but we have certain standards that we cannot share. There's certain information we cannot share because of those standards. Okay, thank you. Any suggestion, any quick question? Shall we leave it there? Okay, so let's move on to the next block, the one for private experiences. Here we have at the table Mr. Dario Baudino. We have 8 minutes. 8 minutes for this, for your presentation. Good afternoon, and good morning, and good evening for those who are online. Let us start with the presentation. As it was mentioned before, we think about sustainability as an opportunity. Okay? The great challenge for Latin America is to think about all the products that are sold worldwide. We sell food or foods to the world, and let's think about the complexities and the realities in each of the countries in Latin America. And our startup operates mainly in Argentina, but we also have to think of the value chains end to end. With regards to soybean, as Francisco was saying, we need to think that we have a price differential between $300 and $400 million. Clearly, that price differential, because of sustainability in this complicated landscape of the data, and how could we commoditize all this? The process can be done by making value chains transparent. So let's think about this. How do we do this in this scalability and in all these production processes that we have seen throughout these days? What is the complexity for the producer in Central America, in the Southern Cone? And so that complexity is, for example, the one that makes this integration and transfer of information from the origin to the end consumer to be a huge challenge. And the challenge, as Francisco said, in soybean is that when that ship is leaving for Europe, it should have had 2,000 waybills. When the truck is going into the exporter and the ship sale, 2,000 waybills have to be verified. Imagine the information pathway that has to go from the origin or place of origin till the moment the truck can go to the port. So we need to digitalize and connect and homogenize the information. Sounds technical, but we all need to speak the same language among all the different information handled in the value chain. Make sure it's transparent, and that will be a huge challenge for the value chain. So let me introduce our solution. It has to do to KYL. It's a field verifier of the origin. of the product, the production area, verify this information with satellite images, and use information that is not only in this production sector, but also outside of it. We need to gather information that is verifiable and that is obviously digitalized, because as it was mentioned in the panel, digitalize all this process reduces friction and makes the producer and all the different players in the chain to provide their information. So this digital product passport accompanies the product throughout the process. So we think about the platform to reduce frictions among producers. There are different players in the value chain, and so we need to create a API to link to other platforms that is quite simple, at very little or no cost to the producer. We need to think of multiple protocols to be versatile and flexible enough, not only to connect information, but also to generate business models that are valued by the entire chain, so everybody can benefit from the process. So here I'm going to give you another word, the part of interoperability. We need to think of those models that can be interoperable, platforms that can speak with each other and that combine different flexible business models. If we have flexible business models, we will be able to modify the incentive system in the chain. And when we modify that, we will be able to generate a new action for each of these players. We believe that this is key, and we provide this information for this to happen. But as I said before in the panel, we need other players to be part of the process. So here we generate very flexible business models. We have SaaS, SaaS. They are generating this process. We have some commercial traction. We have partners that are strategic partners that provide information, and there are investors throughout the chain. So this interoperability has to be real and feasible. Execute something that you can actually execute. And something that we wrote here as a landmark is that we have already verified in livestock more than 3,500 livestock establishments that can verify that they do not produce deforestation. And we are sending containers of Argentinian leather traced end to end, doing the due diligence or non-deforestation. So these are things that can be done. It is done through interoperability, integrating information, and each part of the chain supports it to allow this interconnection of information. If I were to tell you what was the challenge in the case of leather, one container of leather has 300 verified establishments, and this is when the cage of the cattle is going into the freezing area and go all the way down to where the leather is prepared. So we have to do all this traceability. It takes a lot of effort, and this means that all players can share the information in the platform. And something was already mentioned in the panel is we need to think about those incentive systems so that the player can actually feel like doing that effort and taking that action. So I just wanted to highlight that part because it's very important to be able to talk about this, and these are the places to do this. So we believe that data generate trust, transparency, and makes it possible to be able to verify this information and follow the necessary protocols. We feel we are prepared. We need to take a look at the reality of each of our productions and our countries, but currently we know the value chain end to end, and so we invite everybody who are members of companies, players, or startups or anything, so we can have this dialogue on how to share information and make sure this information can provide value to the product and the food that our producers are producing. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. Perfect timing. amazing. You had 2 seconds left. Very good. You can use them later. Okay, so now we're going to give the floor to Jairo Marin Leito. We have 8 minutes for Jairo as well. I'm not going to interrupt you because you can see the time you have left, Jairo. So good morning. My name is Jairo Marin. I'm a systems engineer. I also have training in industrial engineering. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this type of activity. I am a 39-year-old professional, and since 2008, I have been attending different conferences and meetings of this type. And I think the whole technological linkage that was developed through these activities was very valuable. As I was talking to Nicolas from Justo, and he was telling me about the blockchain solution. And we were laughing because I was telling him I'm new 2 years ago on a car via Pérez Celedón trying to validate and these ideas. And now we have the opportunity to use this technology locally and give it to Costa Rican clients and companies. So I am grateful as a Costa Rican to have the opportunity to portray this effort, and I would like to congratulate the authorities at ICA and the entire group who makes this possible, because actually it is truly important. And something else that I wanted to say during this time is that this is also quite useful because oftentimes we feel like lone wolves, like the song says. But these days have helped us do some retrospective analysis in a herd. And so, going back to the topic, we are a Costa Rican company specialized in the development of agricultural RPs. Our main focus is the meat sector, but as we enhance our knowledge, our experiences, we expanded this into other sectors such as poultry, slaughterhouses, agriculture, and food production. We have had over 15 years understanding the production processes and the different parties in the value chain. And we have also visualized the problems of SMEs with regards to the digitalization of the business at the core of the process, which is the production part, but where we find some weak traceability in compliance with the regulatory systems. And so oftentimes they may lose profitability and they may be inefficient in their processes. So from this perspective, there was a need to develop an ERP that would have mobility, web access, and commercial capabilities altogether. We understand that a generic software, ERP, oftentimes does not comply with specialized tools that understands the complexity of the processes. And so our value proposal is to provide a specialized ERP. And why do we talk about a specialized ERP? Because it helps us, first of all, to be a modern web platform. We have some clients who have been using this ERP for 10 years already. And this is attained through integration of specialized hardware such as scales, weighing indicators, LED technology for reading fat, and obtaining the percentage of usable meat. And this can be turned into useful information for pork producers, or that may allow them to know what the quality of their animals is. And precisely based on the technologies that you have presented, they can carry out analysis in terms of everything that is going on at the farm. Taking all of this into consideration, we have accompanied clients in Costa Rica, like Anis Castillo, Matero Cinco Estrellas, Agrícola Zumbado, that are companies, important companies in this industry, and that have been able to start using an ERP in their business that shows them the entire business cycle and chain integrated. And so they can see the day-to-day processes in modules that help them integrate with accounting and with the financial part. which is something very important. Oftentimes, they may have a very general view of what is going on, and the balance of situation, balance statements, and everything do not reflect what is happening on a day-to-day basis. And with this system, we have been able to digitalize not only the process, industrial process, but also make sure they are robust ERPs like the ones that are out there in the market that have access to e-commerce and virtual learning that is so important, as well as banking integration. And all this allows to enhance the capabilities of the companies in that industry. And one of the most important points was traceability that can be digitalized and needs to be strengthened at the business level so that they can ensure the value chain and also visualize what has happened with the product from the moment an animal comes in, so to speak, to a slaughterhouse where they record a pre-mortem form all the way down to the moment the meat reaches the table of the different consumers. That is very important because that allows us to foster growth and allow Costa Rica to have tools that enables food safety and security in our region. And the idea is to consolidate the positioning in the agricultural sector of Costa Rica, continue developing these ERPs, particularly for SMEs, and that's why we have BIGS in the ERP, which is more compact, a smaller ERP that allows SMEs to have the capability to invest in a specialized ERP without spending thousands of dollars, and that's very important. The second thing is that the main challenge that we were facing with Dixon, which means the seed in the Bribri language, Aboriginal language of our country, how to do an ERP that was compact enough, because many of the SMEs not only have the challenge of finding the money to invest in software, but that they also have to think about the professional muscle they may have, operational muscle they may have to feed this ERP, to manage that ERP. So we try to make sure that this ERP has all the functionalities and all the technology of other ERPs, and also the capability of automating as much as possible and integrate things as much as possible so that the human capital of those SMEs can leave aside to a certain extent the digitalization and take care of analyzing the business, support the small business person. And in this way, our slogan says, allow companies to establish their roots. And that's our focus. That's our vision. And I just want to thank you for this space, to Ika and all of you for this linkage that we are attaining. Well, thank you very much. And this is a wonderful thing to have this clock in front of us. Okay, so we're going to move on to the last presenter in this block. And that is from the private perspective. And we have somebody online. We have Mr. Fernando Diaz of FNA. He is the founder of DG Rodeo, an Argentine company dedicated to developing technological solutions that improve efficiency and management in livestock production systems. So, Fernando, the floor is yours.
So
I am Ignacio Iturriaga. I am Fernando's partner. Fernando is just watching. I'm going to be presenting. So thank you very much to the Institute for the opportunity. I would like to share my screen here now. Tell me, please, if you can see my screen, my presentation. Can you see it? Yes, we can now. Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, I'm Ignacio Iturriaga. I'm an animal production engineer, and I have a master's degree in animal well-being. Our company started with a specific objective to attain the complete traceability of our animals in a simple and accessible manner. I want to start my presentation with this image. This is a wonderful juicy beef. And when we are eating this, I want you to, when you eat something like this, I want you to ask yourselves, do you really know what you're eating? Yes, I know. I know what part of the beef it is. I can tell if it comes from a cow or a calf. No, let me go beyond that. Do you know which animal it was? And you're probably going to tell me no. And this is a key topic. It has to do with health. We, just like us, animals receive drugs on their daily lives, and there is a time that goes between the moment when I apply the drug until it is totally discarded from the animal's body. Usually that takes basically 30 days. So that if that animal has to be sent to the slaughterhouse, it shouldn't have any antibiotic residues in its meat so that I don't eat that. There's another question that has that beef that we're seeing is, what do we know about the sustainability or animal well-being? Well, we don't know anything when we eat that beef. So let me give you some data here. The main cause of death in the world by 2050 is going to be the antimicrobial resistance. This means that if I get a disease that has to do with bacteria, the antibiotic is not going to work. It's not going to combat this bacteria, and I'm going to die while before any antibiotic could kill this bacteria. So out of the 27 antibiotics used in livestock, 20 are also used in human health. So it means that we don't talk about animal health and human health, but we talk about a One Health concept. So faced with this problem, what would be the solution? Traceability. But what do we understand by traceability? Traceability is a number of procedures that allow me to follow the evolution of an animal in each of the stages of its life. If I start following up this animal, I'm going to measure, I'm going to have production out results. If I have that, I can improve those production processes by optimizing production. Also, I can also provide an added value to that animal and also certify if I am sustainable, if I am environmentally friendly, or also how I'm doing with regards to animal well-being if I have good animal well-being practices. And so to solve this traceability problem, DG Rodeo was developed, and the hardest thing about traceability is creating the data in an equivocal way. So first we need to digitalize the animal, have the data in a pretty much infallible way so that the work in the field may be simple and accepted by producers. So first we start with the identification, and what we add to the identification is an electronic chip, a different chip from what was being used. The one that was being used, we leave it there, we use it as a backup, but this allows us to read that animal at a distance remotely. When I do this remotely, I don't have to have cages. I increase or better the animal well-being, and I do not produce stress to the animal. Other of the follow-up practices that we have is that instead of having the tag for the animal, we have a number of pistols that allow us to read the animal in the field 5 meters away without having to cage the animal. And then we just read the numbers easily. And thanks to this chip, we have some portals that allow us to do some massive reading and the unattended management. That's what we call it. So if we have this close to weighing stations, we know how many animals went by, how many were weighted, and how much they weighted. So the most important tool that we have developed is this smart syringe that allows us to register all the medications that the animals have received and control immediately the period where the animal is being cleared from this medication so it reaches clean to the fridge. These tools do not need connectivity to work in the field, but at the end of the work, at some point, I need to connect to the internet, and the data that I generated in the field will be uploaded to a cloud. They're going to be processed, and then they are downloaded as information that I use from this DigiCloud platform, where I have useful information for producers, the refrigerating facilities, and others, and the markets.
We give this a different value proposition. Before, we had a basic traceability concept, origin, slaughterhouse, and that traceability is not enough. That is missing a lot of story behind this. So our proposal is to truly tell the entire chain through all the tools that help me audit and demonstrate the history of that animal, where it was born, if someone else raises the animal, if it is get ill, what treatment was given, if it meant all the withdrawal periods. And here I can mention all traceability. In Argentina, Chile, Peru, we are entering in Paraguay. We are working with camelites with small producers to show the correct animal welfare practices because they have lost market. They could not demonstrate how they treated their animals. And our customers basically are producers, both large and small, in the slaughterhouses and even governments to help them with sanitary controls. Nowadays, we have a huge opportunity in Latin America. More than 550 billion animals of different species, basically all the different types, camelids, swine, etc., and moving towards digitalization. This is not an imported solution. No, this is a Latin American technology thought about for the region, adjusted to tweaked to our reality in Latin America, affordable for small as well as large producers. And allow me to leave you with a final message by saying that traceability, if it is not a cost, it is a strategic investment in three main areas. Trust has appeared. We have heard this in all presentations. Trust because it generates markets and transparency. Health because we are protecting the animals as well as the humans or individuals, and in the future because it prepares us for more supportable and competitive future. And that future, which begins today, we want to build it together with the support of ITA and all countries of our region. And with that, thank you very much. Okay. We have questions and comments, and we have a first question over here, I see. I did not introduce myself. Fernando Ganga, Ministry of Agriculture, Uruguay, Rural Development Technical Director. Particularly, my question is, who gives all that assurance to the consumers? Is that private enterprise? What is the role of the state in all of this? This is for discussion, open question. Okay, speakers, perhaps. Otherwise, we're going to have a revolution here. This is an important discussion for everyone. Okay, quickly, that is an interesting question, and the discussion is very interesting also because if you noticed my presentation, we have actions together with the Ministry of Agriculture, at least in Argentina, and we have talked a lot with Uruguay and Paraguay and different government actors there because clearly this has to be a sector that has to use this information and provide the information also. So once everything is verified, then we can trust it and we can harmonize information. And this could lead to a seal, a better control. And we have talked about this in the panels. We want to improve controls through digitalized information. How can we reduce this? Of problems or lack of control. In my view, there has to be a joint effort providing data and collaborating with the current technologies and digitalization, which clearly will reduce barriers for consumers and for all actors in the chain. Very good. Jairo? Okay, anyone that wants to, any speaker that would like to tackle this, well, I believe it is very important regarding that question. We should always focus on the symbiosis between the public and the private sectors to push forward that type of regulations. In Costa Rica, there are significant regulations in SENASA, the regulating entity, but we must develop that symbiosis, as our colleagues from the head table were saying, and create this awareness in the sense that traceability is not an expense, it is an investment. We are investing in food security for the end consumers. And in a holistic context, in the end, this will have repercussions in business benefits. So above all, I believe what is most important is how the state and public institutions can foster this symbiosis and highlight the importance of traceability and educate the private sector in the sense that this is not an expense, it is an investment that will be of benefit to each and every one of us. Thank you. And other speakers online, Ignacio, Eva, would you have any comments? Go ahead and speak out. Ignacio has raised his hand. Well, what we think about DigiRodeo is that this is an ecosystem where different businesses help, and the rules of the game are set by the state, obviously. The government cannot be creating technologies. That is what private enterprise is all about, but they can foster traceability. So the rules of the game and requirements are set by the government. We adjust to that, and then we propose new technologies to help the state. Otherwise, the government cannot be regulating, legislating, and inventing new technologies. That is why we need this symbiosis, this ecosystem that Jairo mentioned, and we firmly believe that. Okay, we will give an opportunity to speakers. Gabriel, Francisco, Eva, or should we move to the last question? No, apparently nobody is daring. Okay, last question over here. Good morning, a pleasure. Thank you very much, Claudio Marconi. First, who is responsible? Well, obviously the government has to give assurance that the operators in the chain are actual, are real, and that their operations are legal. That on one hand, and obviously the private sector is responsible for the guarantees and assurance because they are the ones in charge of the business. But my question is basically to our panelists. Several times we have heard mentioned the difficulties of businesses to adopt the traceability technologies. What are the main limitations you have come across? The operational side of businesses, is it staff or is it culture itself within the businesses? What is the biggest limitation? Thank you. Well, I will take this. The difficulties, hurdles, well, when we were talking about SMEs, we will have to ask whether an SME in Central America is exactly the same size as one in Argentina. We must consider all these differences. And we have to see the state of the art of technology being used at each of these businesses. One thing is an SME, and the other one is a huge corporation, something else, and how they adopt and see technology. So there are two matters here. One thing is to sell software. The other one is is to sell hardware. Hardware is, we see the results, but with software, it is a bit harder. So there's a lot of teamwork to sit down and walk along with the business, giving them advice and helping them implement the software or the platform. So as far as we are concerned, and in response to your question directly, we have a big challenge to support them to explain how to use it, how it can help them, and how it can be optimized. And as Jairo said, we help them optimize processes and reduce errors within the business as a plus. And then we think of traceability and then setting up different subproducts. So there we seek synergies. And businesses begin to understand and adopt technologies. We help them purchase additional technologies to increase the end-to-end traceability. So this is a lot of hard work, yes, but we are seeing results. We are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. When we started to interact, to take solutions when the product changes or when their daily activities change, well, we believe this is something positive, and they begin to understand that traceability, digitalization, and verification all are a win-win. And they will be better paid for the product, and that is a win-win for all parts involved. Thank you. I have been asked to summarize the subject matter. Let me try to do this, because there are so many ideas have arisen here that require deep interpretation. I will dare summarize this. The first idea that I jotted down, and that is very complex, broad, and requires further evolution. So in this sense, there are legal aspects, legal requirements that continuously evolve. There are technology selection elements, landscape of technologies that ever broader. ICTs have arisen in our context, but we have the whole series of other technologies that are moving at huge steps. A very complex system, no doubt, a system where there is appearance of new technologies and governance management and technology management elements also we must consider. Another element is that everybody has agreed that this does bring about benefits, very important benefits, by the way, important benefits, and others agree that traditional systems have not evolved enough. They are very costly and really do not fulfill the expectations of the private sector, the public, or consumer trust. Another aspect that has been highlighted is precisely due to that complexity, due to about the need of co-design and co-implementation of this many elements. We have a very different landscape, and we must include flexibility. We have a great stratification of demands, etc. And perhaps not as strong, but it has been mentioned several times that we do need to intensify training at all levels, at the level of users, consumers, public administration, business, and this requires collaborative training at all levels. And a key element, at least for me, and this is what I interpreted, is that the system has a big opportunity to create shared value and to respond and support private and public initiatives. There are many that are in a portfolio of policies that are under development, and there is a big opportunity ahead. And we have seen a very important element as if it were functional, and that is the need for a new generation of RP, if we can call it that way. And that new generation must contain an interoperability system. That is, that each step, each part in the RP, each module, each has to have an API open to it to open up the doors to everything that is behind with all the corresponding requirements. Many more things, but I would like to insist on two. that have been mentioned implicitly and explicitly. Basically, cybersecurity is one of them. That has been basically, here we have to collect data that will be made available and that we will have standards for their utilization, like the ministries do. But there are fraudulent uses also. We have seen this, and that is very important. So if you give me 1 minute, we are facing very difficult problems with the forging safe imagery, like satellite images. We have forged and images, and that was what we relied on before, a satellite with camera providing data in real time and images in real time. But now we are trying to develop elements to compare that, and there is a cybersecurity effort in a phase that we post-quantum phase, a paradigm shift. And the other important thing that our first speaker mentioned, ethics. If there is no ethics, we will basically have to basically build quick walls. And I know that was very quick, very summarized, but I believe we have met our deadline. I would like to thank the speakers and all of you. Hopefully, this is a very interesting seed to continue with this type of dialogue. Thank you, Jose Emilio. We thank the speakers, both virtual as well as in person. And now we will move to a next panel. For this, we would like to invite Federico Bert, who will be in charge of mentioning the key takeaways, conclusions, and agreements for action.
Bueno, saludo formalmente. Buenos días.
Formally, good morning. To go straight to the point, this basically is the last formal panel of the Digital Agriculture Week. And obviously, there will be a series of other supplementary activities attached to this event. But let me try to in very general terms, try to highlight things. There are many things that have been said, at least in my case, and I have to process these, digest them, and process them in order to give a good summary. But it is always good to try to rescue at least what is most important right at this time. So I would like to invite to the head table Mariana Vasconcelos, Jose Emilio Guerrero, Rodrigo Saldívar, Oliver and Oriana, and on behalf of the AgTech Network, Victor Mundo. On behalf of the INEAs, in this case, Embrapa, and I have asked Victor to come forward. And Jeremias. The idea is to have a quick round, a couple of minutes, the most per speaker, that have moderated panels or coordinated some of the parallel events. They all represent sort of different actors and those that participated in the digital innovation ecosystem. Okay. Enough chairs, Jose? Enough seats? Okay. So this will be very interactive later. We want to share feelings and ideas and impressions here. And there will be a mini survey to get some feedback, particularly to improve for the near future. So, without further ado, and allow me to go in the order you set down, very democratic and very random. Could you please give us your general impression, the feeling you are taking back with us? A technical analysis will be later on, but just your quick takeaways, the main emerging concepts, ideas, or something that was repeated or something you feel is innovative from these last few days. Jose Emilio, you first. Okay, very quickly. As to the impression, well, the usefulness of these spaces of dialogue and how they have resulted into spaces of dialogue at the country level, at the regional level, because this encourages us to continue pursuing ideas into the future. And two matters that, at least in my experience, the two key aspects are, when we talk about digitalization processes, we must understand we need to change our workflows. This is not about just putting on a little Band-Aid. No, this is a symbiosis in collaborative work. And this is a fundamental aspect. And those of us that are usually involved in communication and information technologies try to put a Band-Aid. No, it must be very interactive. And secondly, the challenge is so large and continuous that none of us could think that we are going to do something if we do not do it in collaboration. Academia, public-private entities, non-governmental organizations, technical experts, and citizens at large. Okay, thank you, Jose Emilio. Very good. Very concrete, very good, very deep. And you set the pace for the rest of this panelist. Go ahead, Mariana. Yes, thank you all. Our main conclusions are, at least I speak on behalf of the AgTechs and of the network, and I hope to represent you all well. I represent ourselves. Adding to what Jose Emilio said, not only is this collaborative work, but as we were mentioning yesterday, we must be more than just the sum of the parts. As a network of AgTechs, we must be more than just a merger of all the AgTechs. We must be an ecosystem with other actors, as research centers, for example, and decision makers, and that's some of the parties. I believe that one of the biggest conclusions is that we, in entities, we all have our egos, our interest in defending our own views. And one of the lessons learned from, at least for me, is that the more we can set aside that selfishness and our interest to defend our own ideas and instead become aligned and under one same voice, we can find that common objective and work as a team. And that will lead us to better coordinated actions. And although this may sound like, oh, that is not the case right now, and we need to be one single voice. No, we must all strive to achieve a common goal, which is to have a clear spearhead within the network of AgTechs and other organizations, listen to each other, sit around the same table together with the same weight and respect, because our voices have the same value. That, I guess, is my main conclusion. And we urge you to be very open to something like this. Thank you. Marian? Well, my feelings, I love the diversity and see how each one in each country, in each crop, we are applying technology. That is incredible. We have been able to see mature technologies that attract results and impacts for food security. And we also interacted with academia and education and everyone. And we say yes to capital. What is of interest to me as the next point is the role of ICA articulating all of this, because there are many good things. But in order to gain scale and that these startups can become a larger business in the future to help fund the transition. And for that, we need public policies and systems with funding connected to a library of solutions so that each one can quickly know for each challenge we have in the region where are the people that could help solve this. Very optimistic, so happy to see all the startups here have been growing in the markets. And as Soriana said, we can work together in favor of a greater objective. Thank you very much. Oliver? Thank you. Good morning. From all the wonderful things that have happened this week, I rescue that. First of all, the connections we have been able to build. Connections are always important because they help us grow. And I see the matter that digitalization in agriculture basically is no longer an option. It is a need, something we need to bring into our public policies to face the challenges both of climate change as well as for digital transformation itself. Something else I take away with me is the need for data, the need to exploit data and know how to use them. So in our conversations throughout this week, we have realized the importance of data, but at the same time, the importance of sharing the data. And that is one of the conclusions we drew yesterday. Perhaps how we could share data among AgTechs so that we can all grow together. Thank you. Those were my comments. My turn. Good morning for everyone. That is quite a challenge, Fede. I will limit myself to 2 minutes, although I would love to talk for 15. But anyway, it is good to be the fifth because there are several things that have already been mentioned and are important. Unfortunately, I do not remember who said outside that there's basically we have had different levels of actions in the startups and in more consolidated businesses. And the challenge is avoiding diluting this effort. I have a modest idea of how to go about this, at least as far as the ICA is concerned. Yesterday, we heard several verbs that are actual and that we hear one against coordinate, integrate, enable. And as to building cooperation, there is space to do that. And I could think of a couple of ideas here. And I pass this hot potato into your hands. The ICA cooperation agenda must be much more open to startups' ideas and problem solvers. And I say it with these words because, at least in the case of Uruguay, this type of opening generates new opportunities, ways to solve problems that perhaps we are not aware of or are not sure we know about these. And that is one point. And the second is that these businesses, whatever large or startups or those that are just growing or those seeking funding, those that already have funding, those that only focus on customers, those that are seeking large projects, should continue to approach it and continue to explain or enable what they do. And with this, I end. This is where I find that value to what Maria was mentioning yesterday about integrating, because the construction is there. Those were my thoughts in the case of Uruguay and particularly in the region. I am at your service to continue elaborating on this and to talk more about how we approach this down in my country so that this is not just a series of verbs, but instead actions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I believe there were many things that were said, and things that I also perceive. This is the second time I attend a Digital Agriculture Week, and I'm very much surprised of all the talent, the diversity of businesses, of startups, people who come here to share their ideas, and people who are at different levels of development. We saw some companies that are fully advanced and others are just getting started and boosting their potential. And so this is something that definitely fills me with much pride because I'm of the region. And I also would like to give value to the role of ICA because of all the work that they do to articulate and try to generate convergencies among different ecosystems. I am sure that for many of you, this was a wonderful opportunity not only to get to know each other personally and learn more about each other's experiences, which is great. We know that the life of the business person is intense. It has ups and downs that are very pronounced. Sometimes are very good, sometimes are very good, bad. And this interaction definitely gives you more critical mass, more support among each other, and also to become aware of all the different ecosystems of the different places, what INEAs are doing in the different countries, spaces that can actually help the internationalization of operations, maybe being able to work in different countries of the region. We know that other countries and regions might have other strengths, such as financing opportunities, venture capital, and so on and so forth. So hopefully with integration, we can become stronger. And I would like to congratulate the organizers for this space. And hopefully it can continue growing in the forthcoming years and have more startups coming up to participate. Thank you. Well, Fede, first of all, congratulations for the organization of this fourth week. It's not easy to prepare a one-day event. I cannot imagine what it is to organize a whole week. So definitely, it's a big challenge. My ideas is that, first of all, digital transformation of agriculture is a very complex challenge. We understand its value, but we know that it's something that is going to happen in the long term. We also know that the substantial outcomes will be reached by a number of actions undertaken constantly and in a coordinated manner, and that we all play a very important role in this type of work. We also know that this is not a one-person thing. We cannot expect for AgTechs alone, or the government alone, or ICA alone, or INEAS alone can reach digital transformation results. That is why the feeling that I have towards digital transformation is that it's a movement that we are all involved in, and that we are structuring the foundations of an innovative ecosystem that it leads to digital transformation. And that's why I would like to highlight the Digital Agriculture Days that started the discussion probably. And after 12 months, we had 15 days in different locations. So I think that's a new chapter in this work to develop the ecosystems. With that, I would like to just give you some ideas for food for thought. First, how to develop the development of this innovation ecosystem. How can we use the Digital Agriculture Days to bring more layers to this network that was formed? And with that, how can we prepare on a year-to-year basis action plans, not only for the Digital Agriculture Week, but in each location? And also, every year we participate in the week, understand how those plans were implemented, and understand if we obtain different outcomes from those actions. Thank you. Well, thank you very much to each and every one of you for your comments. I would like now to open the floor to everybody to give you the chance to make a comment. And first of all, to Lizzie Alcántara, Carlos and Caterina, who are part of the team, and Lizzie, particularly, who was in charge of much of the organization of this event this year. She has worked numerous hours in trying to coordinate everything that you saw and lived. But not only because of that, but because Lizzie has a very clear perspective and supplementary perspective. I'm more of an agronomist, a technician, a limited hard person, kind of, sort of. So, Alicia. Hello, everyone. My comment. Well, first of all, thank you, Federico. What I wanted to do is thank everyone for your presence, the moderators, speakers, ACTEX, ICA colleagues who came from different countries, all of you, because we wouldn't be able to be here without the presence of all of you. And organizing this kind of event is truly a challenge, of course, but the outcome, and I'm saying this as a regional program, the being able to listen to you, discuss things with you, understand how you work, the role that you play in this process, which is digitalization, encourages to move forward because you give sense to everything we do. So thank you very much for being here, for your input. Yes, it was a challenge, but it seems things work well. So thank you, of course. And I would also like to thank the entire team because I was in charge of many things, but we don't work in isolation. So I have so many good team colleagues. We have an excellent leader who gives us the chance to think and act. And so thanks to the team. And of course, we cannot forget the most operational team of the logistics of the event here at the headquarters, without whom we wouldn't be able to bring you here, the ITC communications and the administrative pool. And I would also like to mention 3 people in particular, Priscila Segura, who probably you all know, you all received an email from her, who worked tirelessly together with us, Arandi, who is there, Randy, sorry, who is there, and Adriana, who from ITC provided all the technical support. So that's my comment. Thank you, Lizzie. Carlos, any words? Well, I would like to also thank everyone. You have joined us in several editions of this week, and so definitely we can through as much for the program, but the agenda is something that is joined. We have had different partners helping us with the panels, different organizations, startups, experts from other organizations, and that definitely enriches the Digital Agriculture Week. We try to decentralize the knowledge and the interaction by different actions. And so we try to be a facilitator to this transformation that we are seeing. So count on us as a partner, and we will continue working hard to continue enhancing our work. So thank you very much. Kathy? Well, just I would like to share a little bit of what our colleagues were saying, what Mariana was saying. I feel truly energized And I believe that the Digital Agriculture Week is not only a product, but also a process. At least for those of us who participated last year and have been working, we have been maturing a number of aspects. We have also enhancing our contact network, the way of establishing methodologies and new projects. So I think that the week is like a block of people, and we're going to try to control networks, and this is truly valuable. And I think that I'm going to highlight not only the operational aspects and everybody who is part of this, but it's also important to create teams and what we're doing in this time. And under the leadership of Federico, who is also very important because he knows how to lead people in this spaces for the construction and development of the ecosystem. So I would like to thank everybody and the very best for what's for the future. We have some time also for people who would like to say something, hopefully a positive comment, if possible. But please feel free to give us your feedback. We have some very brief summary. I don't know if we can screen the QR code so that people can actually fill out your quantitative evaluation. Please fill out this QR, the survey at the QR code, and I leave the floor open for anybody who would like to make a comment. Javier, go ahead. Very brief. I was posting something at LinkedIn and I was thinking, what am I going to post? And so I want to thank the organizers because it's an amazing activity and because of the quality of the people present here and all the knowledge and the positive and negative things that we learned. All the things that I am taking home with me to think about and mature and everything. So hopefully I'm going to be able to adjust all this when I'm back home. And I want to thank you for all the people, the knowledge, and the links that I was able to develop here. Thank you. Any comments? Any other comments? Okay. Like most people have said so far, I would like to thank the organizers. It was amazing get to know this space as we spoke in different networking sessions and getting to know other realities, other processes. You might have studied the value chain oftentimes, but knowing it firsthand, listening about other realities is definitely enriching. I would like to thank the entire team and the way you have developed this week is amazing. Let me give you some specific input. As our colleague from Uruguay said, I coincide with the process. I think that this effort carried out throughout this week is good. And it would be good also to put things in the companies, in the producers that need to connect with technology. It's good to raise awareness on all these topics. So, as a hackathon of real problems and solutions, maybe we can come up with something like that. And the spaces in each country at ICAM, the ICAM may be that facilitator that generates this matching of real problems, companies, producers with solutions that might be feasible. At least the matching. After that, companies can work at ease with the startup or the solution that needs. So this is just my input, and I would like to thank everybody again. And let's continue growing together. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dario. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the invitation. It is the very first time I participate in a Digital Agriculture Week. I'm Macarena Espinosa. I come from Chile. I work at a public institution that delivers different supporting tools for farmers or producers in the country. It's amazing how many companies have advanced in terms of digitalization. And I also I'm also taking home the challenge of seeing how can public or institutions integrate digitalization in public policies in order to support these businesses and reach production sectors. Aside from that, I would like to thank the team, the organizers. This has been a very pleasant experience. I'm taking home many learnings, and I'm also taking home many challenges to think about, and hopefully we can continue doing this to think about different initiatives on digitalization.
Gracias, Maca.
Thank you, Maca. Cesar.
Perdón.
Oh, sorry, over there. Yeah, I also wanted to thank ICA for and IDB for the invitation. And I would like to make a suggestion because everybody talks about reaching producers, but I want to know how many agricultural producers are here. One. But we're saying that if we want to get closer to them, at least we should have some producers organizations here. And I think it is also unbalanced. There are very few people from the public sector, decision makers. If we want to integrate them, there should be more people from those sectors. Knowing what's happening in the businesses is amazing. I think it's amazing to have a space for startups. As Rodrigo said, this is a great platform, but I also think we need to, for the integration of the sector, we need to open up the space and the academia as well. We need to move more actors from the academia. The University of Cordoba is here, the University of Buenos Aires is here, but maybe we should add more of those sectors, more people from those sectors. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate you and Federico and the entire team who organized this event. This has been an exceptional activity. I already have my recommendations. And the first thing I would highlight is that there is a real ecosystem, but it's fragmented and we need to classify it. We see that there are certain startups that are very early stage, others are more mature, that tackle different sectors. So that real map of where we're standing needs to be developed. And I think that in the startups interaction, there is a huge potential because we are startups. We have a completely different way of thinking. We act much faster. We find funds. We make mistakes. We learn, and we can execute in a much more efficient way. We also need to segment the end user. Who is our end user? They all have different characteristics. I work with large agriculture exporters, and we have talked a bit about that. But we also talked about the small farmers, small producers. There are NGOs, there are private companies, and there are also some non-for-profit organizations. So that would be an exercise that might help us actually organize where we are and help orient the policies to gain a better impact. Other point that I think is key, and this has to do with the age and the things you've lived, teach you things as well. So we need to focus on what is the problem we're solving. And this is not a negative criticism. This is a constructive criticism. We need to look at the how. We talked about drones, artificial intelligence, sensors, but we do not necessarily focus on the problem that we are solving and the real impact that we are measuring and when solving this problem. So this is one of the challenges that we should also include because that's the way the end user will be able to see the return on investment and not just see technology as a cost. Maybe I'm exceeding myself, but just to conclude, in terms of investment, I think there is an important point there. There's a benchmark. When you talk about startups, you talk about Silicon Valley, like it or not. And there you talk pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, exits, IPOs. That's the language. But the metrics that we have in the Americas and Latin America versus Silicon Valley are completely different. We have raised over $2 million, but maybe a similar company can raise 20 million under the same conditions. That has definitely poses an initial challenge. So we need to find mechanisms for this not to happen. Because as a business owner, I have the challenge of supporting the team, and the people who work for me will end up leaving for Silicon Valley. So there is a real challenge of supporting a company that wants to compete and wants to continue providing value to the system, ecosystem. So when a VC speaks and says you need to have with metrics of factoring, hockey stick, everything. Oftentimes, these are not applicable to an ecosystem like ours, where agriculture takes time. There is a huge cultural gap. There are validation periods because you need several campaigns to validate a product. So we need to adjust the benchmark for the current reality or try to compensate it with incentives. Maybe the government or some other sources, financing or funding sources, might see the investment made by governments and see how much of the GDP is actually invested in research and development in our countries. It is illogical to see that it's 0.01 in some, and maybe that can be allocated to the agrotechnology. Just to conclude, on the AgTech network, I think that is a wonderful initiative, and the energy that they have as young people is something that we definitely need to seize, but it should be led by JICA under a more senior structure to support real expectations. It shouldn't be, as this is not a negative comment, but it shouldn't be just made up by a number of people who meet via WhatsApp or Google Meet, and there are specific efforts. In this, right now, we are all very much energized, but that energy fades away in time because there's no well-structured role, and there's no financing. These are almost personal things. Let's make a web page. Let's put all the startups. Let's post some information. But behind, there should be a very well-structured guideline, a strategic guideline to understand how all that information can feed what has been worked by different countries within their ecosystems. I know that in Peru, we have worked with SENASA. There is a cultural gap in ABC. And out of that analysis of the startups, we can use that information to close that gap or comply with that need. So again, it would be a bunch of individual efforts here and there, but I am complying with trying to fill gaps. I hope my comments are of use, and please count on me for whatever you may need. Thank you very much, Cesar. Klaus, I think we have time for 2 or 3 additional comments. Klaus, Tomás, or Robbins? Yes, I would like to thank again Ica Federico and his team, because what you give us is very important. And what are you giving us during this 4th Digital Week? Visibility. The fact that the AppTechs have a space to meet is amazing. It's very important. And something that we coincide is that we're creating a market. And it's very difficult because including technology in a space such as agriculture is complicated. So having the fact that we can communicate, that we compete, that we can talk among each other is truly rich, because it will help us move forward. As AgTechs are heard, are known, and as soon as we can see that there's a need for this space and there's a market in general, we will be able to then get better facilities, to have better metrics, for more investment, for other things. So this effort is quite good. Thank you for articulating and promoting the network. Now it is our work to make it more dynamic, and that's part of the commitment that we should take home. You do a lot in that sense, and I also think that something you mentioned, Caterina, is not only a day, it's a process. Once we went through this week, now it is up to us to work with the AgTechs and the ICA seal, that fellowship, alumni that we have, will is distinguishing us in many ways. So I hope this continues and more actors can sum up. Thank you. Thank you, Klaus. Robinson, and the last one will be Tomas. Well, thank you. My name is Robinson. I'm one of the old famous by ICA. We were the first generation. And I can talk about some of the things that can be improved, but I think I have a very good perspective from the first to the last. And I went close with that evolution. I think that we are still missing to include those who have the problems. We have many solutions, incredible, everything that is being done, but we still need to listen to the problems. We still are addressing very general problems like food security, climate change, but then we need to look at the specific problems. Governments still have an internal information fragmentation problem. And I know these are boring things. I know that it's not as sexy as to talk as in artificial intelligence or so, but I still think that we still have homework to do. Easy, such as the hanging fruit, low hanging fruit that many of us can address, but we're not listening to all the players that have the problems. You mentioned the production, agricultural sector, but maybe listen to the governments internally. What are the needs that they have that can be solved here? I think that's an area for improvement that is there. And let me tell you, I was here in the first round, and there were 15 startups saying that we could do and complaining about we can get. But I see a huge evolution from the first edition to this last edition. We have lots of startups here. And back then, we all fit in a single table. Now, this is amazing. I want to congratulate the team because you can see the maturity, you see the commitment of people and the integration of all the parties. I think we have been able to listen to many proposals for solutions, but since I work and listen to the governments, even the regional governments have some basic solutions, such as I have everything in Excel and I would like to have a geo server to lower the cost of serving people. So this can be solved in half a morning probably, and I see many easy simple problems that can be easily solved. But again, congratulations to all the team, and I've seen the evolution, and I'm sure next year is going to be even greater. Thank you, Robin. Tomaso, you're the last one. It is a great honor and responsibility to be last. I'm going to speak in Spanish. I have taken a few notes. I was wondering if the mechanism to continue with this dialogue among the different players that we have seen here this week and during the Digital Agriculture Days may actually be inspired in the AGIS model. Because I've seen that the work of INEAS, on one hand, is going that direction. Research, for example. Maybe the same groups that were formed during the Digital Agriculture Days might be a good starting point in that sense. But maybe we can also have a greater opening to other key players, to the network of suppliers. I don't remember the name they have. How can an embryo of act as an AGIS embryo and inform and put pressure on the public decision makers? And the idea is to give them the weight to what Cesar was saying, give them a greater weight. And that might be something that we can see as a junior. And from that standpoint, there's at least one example in Peru, the CINIA. It may be that we can start studying the CINIA, speaking with CINIA to see how to replicate that experience. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Tomaso. And thank you so much for coming, being present throughout the week. We really appreciate your presence here. Well, to conclude, 2 or 3 more minutes, I just want to give the floor to Oriana, who will just tell us what was agreed upon during the ACTEC meeting. As Cesar was saying, at the beginning, we were convinced at ICA that it was good, that in the same way that there is a chamber or a network within the country, the idea at ICA is to push so that this can be formed and consolidated. But in the end, it is the responsibility and the energy that needs to be invested by you.
The idea, as we mentioned at the beginning, is for this to be a space, a network, a chamber that, first of all, can be a benefit and speak out on behalf of the ACTECs in the region. So ICA is here to support. But obviously, we will have to let you walk on your own as startups in the network. Oriana, thank you, Federico. Based on those collective interests, during the Digital Agriculture Week, we have defined strategic lines of action or priorities for the startups that have been participating. So these are 5 lines and areas of work to overcome the 5 lines. So we work by team. Each team developed strategic actions that we will discuss with the ICA as well as decision makers, and let me quickly mention them. It's a couple of actions per line of action, which is the result of your work, the ACTECs, and I synthesized with Oliver, and they need more work. This is just a draft of the actions we have. So down collaboration and strategic partnerships. One of the ideas is to fund and support the creation of regional repository of ACTEC solutions, a digital platform with shared content and technical support that is also shared. And other tools, hardware, shared hardware, for example, for the network. And down the line of, let's see, which one was this? Let me see. Impact and digital governance and public policies. With ICA, we will create a political technical forum where ministers can sit down with ACTECs and discuss jointly and in parallel at the same level the actions to develop the ACTECs and for agricultural digitalization and support the creation of national and local groups that can join the ACTEC network that already exists. In collaborative and sustainable financing, co-finance regional marketplace to connect ACTECs with investors and multilateral funds. So to have the BCs in this portal also, and with that, the role of ICA would be as the neutral guarantor of any agreement between BCs and ACTECs. There are entities like ICA that can support this type of interaction, and a series of actions were developed and that we fine-tuned with Oliver. Some of these were very broad ideas, and we had to summarize these instead. At the digital level, we'll develop the digital agriculture library to support the creation of a digital literacy program with youth and adults. And visibilization and positioning, we talked about funding the operation of a hub for digital communication that could also be part of the digital network that already involves what I have already mentioned. This digital communication hub would be shared resources, shared knowledge, for example, with interns in marketing that perhaps could help us develop campaigns for the network and to show off what the network does, and as well as each of its members. And with that, I end. And I would like to thank the ICA and all the ICA team for enabling this, for working so hard from all angles and headed by the agri-food digitalization area, headed by our colleague here. We thank you all. We would like to thank Jose Emilio for being here to be our right hand, connecting us all. Thank you, Oriana. Thank you for your summary. Oriana and Oliver, thank you for the hard work you have been doing, pushing along to consolidate the network or the chamber, or whatever we want to call it when it grows up. Personally, I do believe that institutions the initial organizations, as they grow, they transform into what they should be, institutions where the individual figure disappears, is diluted, but there's no way for things to kick off at an individual level if we do not have certain commitments and efforts, and that is what they are doing. They are open to whoever wants to join this effort. And in ending, our very brief comments, personal comments, not even on behalf of the program. I do not want to put ICA in a pinch. My vision in very general terms, and this I confirm as we go through the different events and other events in our countries over the last year, is that we are in the initial phase of the digital transformation process, a phase which is somewhat chaotic still, with multiple solutions, perhaps some for problems that do not exist, others that need to be fine-tuned. We still need capacity, visibility, skills. So at times of maximum chaos, as time passes, things will start settling down and clarify, and we will build the capacities, the infrastructure, whatever is needed for the effective use of these technologies. We get too much excited because there are so many technologies, a bunch of problems, but we cannot see how those technologies could be used to solve those problems. As ACTEX, but as I was saying at the beginning, they have a technological component, but above all, they have a social process, and social processes have different paces as compared to those of technology. And for me, that is where we are. All of that progress and digitalization, my modest view is the view I give to the way I plan the program. And these are things that will happen with or without ICA. Startups will continue to they will be born and eventually die with or without ICA. Technologies we adopted with or without ICA. So what ICA can do is help that process to take place as best as possible, not working alone or in isolation, but in public-private partnerships, and that is our vision. And we find different instruments like this week precisely for that to happen. The process is inevitable at any place in life. Technology is cross-cutting, with or without a week, with or without us. Obviously, if there are weeks with the participation of different actors, some that are still underrepresented and that we will try to bring on board, I am sure there will be more conversations and more coordination and more efficient processes, therefore, and then a faster digitalization to draw all its benefits and without or with the least possible negative impacts, because any large transformation, obviously, no doubt, unfortunately, does have some negative impacts. And I believe we are all living full of energy. This is basically a trip into the past with our age differences, but do not remind us that we are old guys. But basically, we should not let this be the end. This is just an idea to convey that this has been very good and that we should keep this in motion. Obviously, routine will gobble us up, and that is the way it has to be. We should not try to change things now. I graduated decades ago, but with all my high school classmates, I can pick up a telephone and call them. We have strong links, and we should use this week for the same thing, build these sustainable bonds. I will not respond to any of the comments or justify myself because basically we asked for comments to improve. But the fact that it's a whole week in person with coffee breaks and lunch breaks, I am fully convinced that that is the way to do it, the most efficient way. we have of generating sustainable bonds so that anyone here can later feel free to call someone else and say, hey, listen, I could go to Peru and work on something like that, or I would like someone else to guide me. This is, we have the impression that sometimes we have an impression that this is the end. No, now with all these bonds and linkages, at the beginning it was easy because we were just a few, but now the number of combinations to develop all these bonds is endless. Well, not endless, but very broad. It isn't, not that I can call absolutely everybody here openly, but particularly we have seen the people that have the interest in one thing or another, and we can work on that, continue to work on that. And in ending, as I was saying at the beginning, this type of event suppose the interest of the existence of the system of chaos, and basically a butterfly moving its wings on one part of the planet will cause a hurricane elsewhere in the planet. And this is what I was saying at the beginning. This is founded on this theory, and the theory of chaos, where a conversation I held during a coffee break later triggered or allowed me to take a quantum leap in what I was already doing as an INIA or a startup or a representative from a youngsters organization. That is what we bet on at this with these events, and this is something that will yield fruit in the future, whether we are in charge of the process ourselves or not. And in ending, sub-representations of some actors here, we have tried to begin to connect them. It is not easy to identify who to bring to events like this through the days of digital agriculture in the countries. And here we could connect to more actors. This was something appropriate we did this year, and we were going to try to enable and tap in future years. Those were my technical comments. And in ending, a couple of words of appreciation and some housekeeping announcements. Appreciation, the broad team all the way from the delegations, everything they have done for the days of digital agriculture, and the whole team that organized this event, beginning with Alicia, which has done so much more than I have. But then my presence up on stage has been more for me than for her, always unfair. Carlos, Caterina, Priscilla, Randy, Veronica, Paula, Adriana, Ricardo, all the ICT team here. David, whom you have seen coming in and going out, walking up and down. Jose, Carlos, Marcela, everyone. And I apologize if I am missing any. Thank you all very much. It has been a pleasure for us. We leave very happy with the job well done this week. I would also like to say that as part of the housekeeping announcements, that we will have some photographs we will be sharing. Everything has been uploaded automatically on YouTube. If you want to see it again or share it, there's a list of all participants we have shared, and very likely we may need to update people that joined us at the last minute, people that were unable to come. And allow me to say, now we're going to coffee break. Enjoy our coffee. And after that, we can come back to a workshop headed by Activa Katia, and we would like to invite you all, particularly startups, to formulate or design business models, business models with social, environmental, and economic impact, particularly for startups. After that, we will go to lunch a bit later today, though. Whoever wants to go back to the hotel after lunch, we can coordinate your transportation. But after lunch, we will also have a session on artificial intelligence applied to agriculture. Although it is more focus is on the ICA inside, whoever wants to participate obviously can join us in the same room. Very gladly, you are more than welcome, and there will be transportation available at 5:30 when we end that block. So I believe that is all. So let us enjoy our coffee. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure.